Hello, I'm Seth Simmons, and welcome to Season 1, Episode 14 of Opt Out. Opt Out's a show where I sit down with passionate people to learn why privacy matters to them, the tools and techniques they've found and leveraged, and where we encourage and inspire others towards personal privacy and data sovereignty. Wondering what drives normal people to focus on FOSS? This episode, we're going to sit down with Q&A to chat about his journey towards privacy and the impact of FOSS along the way. Welcome on to Opt Out Q&A.
Hey Seth, it's a pleasure to be on. Thank you for having me. I'm a long-time listener, small-time fanboy, so big fan of yourself and all of the previous guests that you've had on. I've learned a lot from both listening to yourself and all of the guests that you've had on chatting, and I like to think that I'm somewhat a product of them passing on their knowledge. So it's a pleasure to be here.
Yeah, I feel like I've told so many of the people that have come on, but a lot of the people have been in circles that both you and I run in, and just in circles that I've been involved in on Twitter and other places. And it's always such a pleasure to get to sit down and chat and just take the time to talk through some of these topics that I feel like we all do education on or focus on, but don't have the time to kind of walk through these things one-on-one. So we've been connected for a long time on Twitter and have been in a lot of the similar circles. And honestly, I've just had a huge respect for you and the work that you've been doing. You put out incredible content. You've been one of the few people who seriously focuses and cares on Bitcoin privacy specifically, putting out tons of amazing guides, and really have been one of the few bright spots in that space of really, really driving and making sure that people have what they need to use Bitcoin privately. And then you definitely have been expanding into FOSS and other privacy. So I'm really, really glad to be able to have you on and chat a bit. And for those who aren't familiar with you, do you mind just kind of introducing yourself for them?
Yeah, definitely. I go by the pseudonym BitcoinQnA, or just Q&A for short. As Seth just alluded to there, I'm just a bit like what Diverter said. I'm just a guy who likes Bitcoin, and I like it that much that I sort of saw a sort of gap in the kind of education space for Bitcoin, really, that as I since 2019, when I got sort of more seriously into the space, I just decided to start documenting my journey so that it could make other people's journeys somewhat less bumpy than my own was, so that they can make less mistakes. So I started, I created a very, very rudimentary website to start with. For a bit of background, I'm not a programmer, not a coder. I've only been delving a little bit into the command line in the recent years, and I'm very much a product of smashing my head off a keyboard for many, many hours, and asking many, many questions in various different Telegram rooms to sort of learn along the way. So since 2019, I've been putting out guides for Bitcoin and more specifically focusing on the privacy side of things. More recently, I started to work full-time in the Bitcoin space at a company called Foundation Devices. We make a free and open source hardware wallet that is completely air-gapped and designed to make it really easy to store your Bitcoin in a safe and secure offline manner.
Awesome. Well, thanks for walking us through that. Yeah, I was glad to hear that you landed at Foundation. Your work needed to end up somewhere, or you needed a chance to focus on it full time. So I'm really glad that you have that opportunity and you're working for what seems to be an excellent company that really cares about FOSS and free and open source hardware as well, which is kind of a even more select niche in the space. So it's been cool to see you there, and I'm definitely curious to learn more about them. I want to chat about them a bit more in the episode. I wanted to just go ahead and dive in and learn more about your personal privacy journey. Obviously, I've seen a lot of your work in Bitcoin privacy, but wanted to get kind of a broader picture. And so I was curious what it was that woke you up to the need for personal privacy originally.
So I kind of already touched on it briefly in my kind of introduction, really. Before I sort of went headfirst into the Bitcoin space and started to mix within the circles that both you and I mix in, both in Telegram and things like that. I was the guy with the Ring doorbell, with the Alexa, with the Apple Watch, with any name or any number of, insert surveillance tech here that's designed to quote unquote make your life easier. I had it. I was that guy basically. Completely didn't have a clue on the impact that this was potentially having or could have to my in the future. Started to really get involved in the communities, more namely the Samurai Wallet community, which I know yourself has spent some time in as well. Obviously, Samurai Wallet is a privacy-focused Bitcoin wallet which attracts privacy-focused individuals. So as I was just spending time chatting to these people to try and learn the Bitcoin tools, that naturally just spilled over into, speaking about what other apps they've got on their phone or people sharing links of database hacks, of governments passing draconian laws regarding infringing on people's freedoms, to dragnet surveillance just to gain more control over the population, I guess, if you could put it that way. So I, until I got into Bitcoin, my personal privacy was non-existent. And then, flipped to sort of 3-4 years later. And I'm sort of, like I said earlier, I guess a product of all of those people's good ideas that I kind of pick the ones that work for me. And I'm sure we'll get into the tools a little bit later on, but I'm just slowly working my way to sort of close all of the loops, to take back my sovereignty with my own data and my own information, be that in and around Bitcoin or just, again, my own sort of being more in control of the data that I share with the people or entities that I choose to do business with, when I'm interacting in day-to-day life or more importantly, online as well. So I'm absolutely not an expert. I'm that guy that drinks from the fire hose, gets a lot of stuff wrong, but kind of takes 2 steps forward and then 1 step back. But the overall trend is that I'm sort of moving forward.
Yeah, we're all there. I mean, no one's taking 2 steps forward and never taking any back. And I'll share a shocking revelation that I'm sure will surprise people, that I just yesterday got rid of Nest security cameras that I had set up around my house. So finally migrated to a solution that's not cloud-based and not obviously sending stuff to Google, but it's a process. And some things are harder than others, I've found, to actually migrate off of and make the jump. And I needed the cameras, but I obviously didn't want to send video to Google all day, every day. So that was a slow process, but it's something I've just migrated off of.
Yeah, I think the problem is when you're unaware of some of the things that I've just touched on in terms of database hacks, draconian laws, et cetera, and you're just sort of blissfully going along daily life with all of this surveillance tech in and around your life, you become so entrenched into it, especially if you sort of, you throw yourself into like the Apple ecosystem where they, they've got a device on your wrist. They own your laptop. You become so entrenched in it that it becomes like a support crutch. And the thought of not having Apple store your photos or not letting Google see all of your search history because you need access to, or you need them to store your files online on their drive for free. It's really, really scary to think, how am I going to do without that? What's the alternative?
Yeah. So
I guess, like you say, it's probably a never-ending journey, to be honest with you. It's kind of a bit more of a cat and mouse chase, as technology improves and as laws change. I guess it's just sort of a skill and a craft that we are always working to sort of improve with different tools and things that become available to us.
Yeah, I think too, a big piece of it is just once you realize how important privacy is, and once you start taking those steps, a big part of it is just that hopefully the things you're learning help you not to get sucked into another ecosystem or another product or another tool that is hard to escape and that is harmful to your privacy. And that can be a big part of it, is just not getting more deeply entrenched into those things. Like the Apple ecosystem can be a super important part of that journey, and so that then you can keep working on the things that you have left over that are hard to migrate from, but just being careful you're not getting sucked into the latest and greatest TikTok or whatever the thing is today that is pulling people in.
I think it also helps as well that in the last sort of 5 years, the alternatives to the sort of incumbent system have come on leaps and bounds, and it's becoming less and less of a gap to jump across to rid yourself of all of the the normalities like Apple, Google, etc., etc. It's I think the two are becoming they're merging ever closer, which is absolutely a great thing for people who do choose that they want to I'll use the plug to choose that they want to opt out.
Mm-hmm. There you go. Name dropping. I like it.
I'll send you the check at the end for that one.
I thought I was supposed to send you the check for that. I also thought it was interesting. You mentioned that Bitcoin and the kind of the Bitcoin privacy circle is what drove you towards privacy. I can't remember how much I've shared of this or if I have shared this, but that was the Monero community that really got me interested in privacy initially. So it's interesting that cryptocurrency, which inherently isn't necessarily a privacy tool, like it is a very important one, but it's money first. I think it's interesting that in those communities and in those ecosystems, that can be a push that drives people towards privacy. I had never really seriously thought about privacy until the privacy conscious people in the Monero community had started talking to me about why it mattered, why it was more important than just in Monero, but in all the tools you're using and all of that kind of thing.
Yeah, I think it's, I guess it's certainly the early adopters, talking more than 5 years ago, the type of people that were attracted to these sorts of technology then are the people that you or I are starting to become now, whereas they sort of saw the importance back then, and they were the ones that were willing to jump over the really, really high hurdles to use the alternatives. And I guess that gladly that they've stuck around in these various circles, and that they've started to pass on their ideas and their ethos and ideology onto people like you or I. And, I kind of just want to pass that forward and be that next person in the line to just to share ideas, really, because otherwise I'd still have my Apple Watch on, and I'd still have my Ring doorbell and my Alexa in the corner of my lounge, and yeah.
You never know what impact you're gonna be able to have on people, and it could just be a passing comment in a public chat room, but you can have a serious impact when you take things like privacy serious. I always say it's not just privacy, but things like privacy seriously, and communicate that to people and take the time to engage in real conversations. And there's a lot of power there. You never know who you're going to impact or what that person that you're chatting with is going to end up doing with that information.
Yeah, I think the other thing that's making it much easier to sort of make people kind of wake up to the need for to look at their own personal privacy. I think governments around the world are doing a fantastic job of that all on their own, and you certainly in the last couple of years since the coronavirus hysteria has gripped the world. In my personal circles, I'm not talking within the Bitcoin space. I'm just talking within my my immediate friends and family. This is purely anecdotal as well. I could be completely out of the loop with this one, but a lot more people are asking questions and being more careful about the apps that they install, or that the information that they're sharing. And it's really, really great to see. So I guess a bit of a tongue-in-cheek thank you to all of the governments around the world for giving us a little bit of a leg up.
Yeah, they've made the initial convincing people why privacy matters thing a bit easier, since they've just made their overreach so transparent in the past couple of years, which is both horrible and great that people can see the things that they're doing and why they need to start caring about those things, both from the government and kind of corporate surveillance level. So there's a lot of work that's been done there for us, which is, I guess, a good thing. Plus, wish we didn't have to be in that situation. But
definitely. But I guess with each step that they take, kind of in the wrong direction, it makes people like you or I look less crazy to our to the people that don't value this as much as we do at the moment.
Yep, look less paranoid by the day. It's how it feels. So hopefully people do think I'm less paranoid every day. We'll see. And I also wanted to just hear your thoughts about why privacy is so important to you today. So I know you mentioned why you kind of jumped into it, but what's keeping it in the forefront of your mind?
Well, I suppose the whole government COVID hysteria thing for me has just reinforced it every day. I try not to watch the news, but unfortunately, it has a way of seeping its way into your life through conversations or, just walking past the TV. And like I said, the steps that they're taking to increase their surveillance capabilities, be that through proposals like central bank digital currencies, where they can control your money and see where you're spending it, to enforcing people like Google to do the, I think, funny enough, this is your pinned tweet, is it not, Seth? Where the US government has ordered Google to monitor certain keywords and feed that back to them. Just little stories like that are unfortunately coming out on a week by week basis, really, that kind of reinforces my biases towards the need for personal privacy. And I guess that keeps me striving to improve my own, but not only that, is to striving to look after my friends and family and make sure that they are at least aware of the impact that certain decisions that they might make. Even if, I would say probably 60 to 70% of the time, the conversations end in them not doing anything. I suppose for me, I can be sort of safe in the knowledge that I've sort of done what I can. And I guess as time goes on, I'm kind of less and less sort of belligerent with it, in terms of trying to sort of hit people over the head with a hammer repeatedly until they listen to what I say, because I used to take that approach, and unfortunately, for me, maybe it's the way I do it, but it just doesn't seem to work. So I kind of wait for the opportunity to present itself, and then kind of, if there's a topic of conversation where people are talking about, vaccine passports, for example, as one of the surveillance tools that the government's trying to implement, I will use that as a sort of springboard then to say, just to open the conversation about a different privacy technique or a privacy tool that they could use to sort of combat that. Okay, vaccine passports is probably a bad idea. There's not a lot we can do about that, unfortunately, if they do get implemented. But, it's I use conversations like that to kind of to sort of shoehorn in my sort of start of my conversations around it.
Yeah, I love that concept. I mean, there's very few chances to just completely change someone's mind on a topic like that. But I think, like you mentioned, it's important to look for those people who are kind of open and starting to get to that place where they care, or they're, like you mentioned, commenting on something that could be a surveillance nightmare, or they're maybe starting to see how something like a vaccine passport could be detrimental to privacy, and use that opportunity to just pitch in some information, be helpful, and try to help pull them in. But then I think, like we've talked about a good bit on previous episodes, just making sure that we focus on having the tools and having the educational material and having the communities available when those people do decide, hey, like I need to take this seriously. I need to start caring about my privacy, and just making sure that those things are available. And I think that's something you've done such an excellent job with in the Bitcoin space, especially, but just having those resources ready, so those people that do wake up and those people you do have those conversations with, they have somewhere to turn next, rather than just kind of blindly stepping into the rabbit hole.
Yeah, I very much just a case of, I'm interested in this sort of stuff. When the time feels right for you, my door is always open. If you need to ask questions or anything like that on these sorts of topics, I'm more than happy to help. And that kind of softly approach works for some people. I think, unfortunately, some people are just of that opinion of that they just don't care, which is sad, or maybe their blissful ignorance is a happier place to be, rather than worrying about the next step that the government's going to take. Who knows? But yeah, you've kind of got to tailor your approach to the specific sort of personal group that you're dealing with, really.
Yeah, absolutely. And is there a particular roadblock that you see those people that you have conversations with struggle to get past when it comes to personal privacy? And then is there like any way that you try to motivate or prompt them to get past that roadblock?
Yeah, I think the first one is the people that sort of do take on board what I say. may try to do too much too soon. I'm sure you've probably had this answer before, but there's and I'm guilty of this too as well. When I was sort of first starting out and taking advice from others online, was you hear 5 different people talk about 5 different tools, and you want to go and implement them all in a day. And when you're first starting out and you're really, really entrenched into the sort of, I guess I call it legacy system of, you've got an iPhone and your photos are sent to the Apple servers, etc. And then you try and, get on board with Signal, or you download Matrix, and then you're trying to set up your own Nextcloud, and you're trying to do all of these things, and you're spinning so many plates. You're just you're gonna burn out, and you're just gonna think, do you know what, this just isn't worth it. So my personal advice really to people to sort of get past that roadblock would be, because we're all busy people, we've all got jobs, we've all got families, we've all got young kids or whatever like that. Just pick one tool. What is your biggest worry in terms of your personal privacy? And let's say they say, I'm worried that Apple's going to start scanning my photos because, obviously that was a news headline from this year. Okay, so say, okay, well, here's some of the alternatives. Here's the easiest way to do it. They might set up a Nextcloud that's hosted for them, which, is not perfect, but it's a step in the right direction where they're sort of moving that away from, where they know it's going to be surveilled, where they can sort of, okay, they're using a hosted Nextcloud solution, but they're getting familiar with the Nextcloud ecosystem. They might, hopefully they see that it's nowhere near as scary as they might think it is to sort of manage that. And then hopefully that might then lead them further down the path where they might look to set up their own hardware at home and host their own Nextcloud. It's kind of just got to be a step journey like that, because if you just sort of switch off Apple Photos or Google Photos and then try and buy some hardware that you've never worked with before, jump into the command line that you've never touched before to set up Nextcloud, then it's going to fall over in a matter of hours, and you're just going to lose interest with it and just stay with the status quo.
Yeah, agree 100%. I think it's really important that people, I think I especially like that you focus on not just like, this is the first thing you need to jump into, but tailoring it to that person and letting them kind of decide like, what is your biggest worry with privacy? And then here are some ways that you can approach mitigating that risk or implementing the solution that fixes that. And I like that, kind of turning it into, what do you care about most when it comes to privacy? And then here are some of the tools that you can use to work around that. I think that's a really important and really good approach. Yeah,
I think, and again, this won't appeal to everybody, but I personally have sort of a list of resources, be that videos or written text on sort of various topics relating to personal privacy or sort of data sovereignty, so that, if it comes up in conversation and we're in a bar, you don't want to sit there talking about Threema or Nextcloud all night, because you're just going to bore them to death. But you just have a little chat about the conversation and say, I've got a good article, I've got a good video on that. I'll send you the link. Just when you wake up tomorrow, just go and watch that video, read that article. And just sort of, because you've had sort of 2 touches, then you've had that initial conversation, and then the next day they might read the message that you sent them, and they'll be like, oh yeah, we were talking about that privacy tool, I'm going to watch this video now. And then you've sort of already had two sort of goes at it then to sort of get it into their head, which is something else that I found that kind of works with some people. It doesn't work with everybody, but it's an approach that I try and specifically normally if I'm out in a bar with people, because people have a habit of forgetting things when they drink.
It's good to make sure they have a tangible way to remember what you talked about. Yeah, something that's been super helpful for me that I learned from a person named De Bruin, who's kind of prolific in the Monero space. He handles a lot of Reddit posts and chat rooms, and he's just like is a wealth of knowledge. And I learned from him just keeping little notes on specific topics so that you can quickly reply with lots of good info, with nuance, with just specific things that are very helpful for that specific topic or talking point or issue that's popular that you run into a lot. Makes it a lot easier to handle those people who come to you and have a question about something that you've gone over 100 times. You don't have to try to piece it together again and again, but just got to have that set of things that you can use, this set of, like you said, articles, videos, maybe something personal that you've written about it or that kind of thing to kind of help guide them and give them next steps on that topic. And saves you the time of having to dig up all those resources every time. Seems like such a simple little thing, but it's been super helpful for me. One of the questions that I love getting asked people, and always curious where it goes, but just simply, what's something that you feel like almost no one agrees with you on?
So I'm going to make this kind of Bitcoin related. So apologies to people who listen to this who are not interested in Bitcoin. And I would say it's not something that almost nobody agrees with me, because the people that you or I mix in will probably, will definitely back me up on this one. But I would say that I'm absolutely in the minority where I say that no KYC Bitcoin is a massively, massively important tool that is unfortunately forgotten about for the 99% of people that are in the space. It seems that the overwhelming majority are sort of more than happy to sign up to a KYC exchange, to give away their, take a selfie with their driving license, give away their social security number, their driving license number, all of their personal details, just to have the convenience of being able to buy some Bitcoin, or I suppose it's true of any cryptocurrency, to buy with marginally more convenience. So it's something that anybody that follows me on Twitter will know that I harp on about a lot, probably to my detriment in terms of people following me. But I think it's really, really important that we kind of spread that message that Bitcoin is supposed to be a tool that enables you to make the payments that they, being the government, don't want you to make. So if your entire Bitcoin stash has been bagged and tagged to your personal name, your name might not be on the public ledger, the Bitcoin ledger. But as most people who spent a little bit of time in the space know, the ledger is completely transparent. You can see all of the transactions, inputs and outputs. There are tools that you can use. Samurai Wallet is obviously a great option that you can use to obfuscate your transaction history when interacting with Bitcoin, and it's one of the best tools available to do so. But if you're coming from an exchange where you've given up all your details, then you might be able to put a sort of roadblock in your transaction history, but you can't erase the KYC trace of you buying, X amount of Bitcoin on this exchange at this date for this price. No amount of CoinJoin is gonna get rid of that. And I guess in a sort of I call it a doomsday scenario, where we have a massive government crackdown in the space, where personal self-custody might be outlawed, or even worse, we go through some sort of 6102 order where, a confiscation order, if you like. Who do you think the government's going to go to first? Whose door are they going to knock on? Well, they're going to go to all the exchanges and they're going to say, give me a list of all your customers. And then the government's got a nice big fat list of doors that they can go and knock on to say, that Bitcoin you bought, it's no longer yours now. We're going to buy it off you for this fixed price. So buying from, peer-to-peer exchanges where you don't have to provide your information to obtain this Bitcoin, or earning it or mining it, depending on your skills and expertise, is a massively important tool in having the ability to truly opt out using a tool like Bitcoin, in my opinion.
Yeah, I think it's such an important point, and I'm thankful for people like you that are willing to kind of lose some followers and lose some Twitter clout by calling out the risks of KYC and the issues that are inherent to that. And there's so many different ways that KYC goes wrong and is problematic. You mentioned obviously the government angle, which would be a horrific nightmare scenario of governments having a easy list of who owns how much Bitcoin, where they live, full names, everything like that, amount of Bitcoin they purchased, wallet addresses, all of that. So that process of confiscation or some sort of crackdown like that would be greatly simplified. But then there's also the non-government approach of these exchanges are not professional cybersecurity companies. They generally, well, they have been hacked prolifically over the years. I mean, cryptocurrency exchanges are famous for how often they get hacked and how many issues there have been over time. And when you give up that KYC info to one exchange, or like many people, and I've done this too in the past when I was getting into cryptocurrency, you give that KYC info to multiple exchanges because this coin is here, this coin is there, this coin is there. And then that information, they have that stored, and there's a good possibility that that information will be leaked at some point. And that could come back to bite you in just a simple way as maybe a hacker gets that info, maybe they buy the info from someone else on dark web or something like that, and then they have your full address, they have how much Bitcoin you own, they have what price you purchased it at, they have potentially wallet addresses and stuff like that. They have ways that they could track you down and rob you, hopefully not harm you, but there are lots of different ways that could go wrong. So there are almost infinite risks associated with giving up KYC info when you're buying Bitcoin or other cryptocurrencies. And there's no real benefit because there's been some pretty fascinating research on how ineffective KYC AML measures are in preventing fraud and other issues with cryptocurrency. So there's not really even benefit for the exchanges or governments, but there's a huge, huge loss to the individual people who give up their privacy because of those KYC AML measures.
Yeah, the only person that loses with KYC exchanges, the little man. You know, it's you or I or anybody listening to this that, like you say, gets their information carelessly lost or hacked from one of these exchanges. You know, we've seen countless over the years. I mean, thankfully they do seem to be becoming sort of less frequent, which is a good thing. But I think also it's not just exchanges, it's anything that's kind of loosely related to Bitcoin or cryptocurrency. And this is coming from somebody who works at a hardware wallet manufacturer, but that's a perfect example of another place where, you know, if you're buying with your real name and getting the device delivered to your home address, if that database is hacked, and I use an example, one of the biggest hardware wallet manufacturers in the Bitcoins, well, in the Bitcoin and cryptocurrency space, Ledger, had a massive hack not too long ago where pretty much their whole customer list was hacked with names, full addresses, email addresses, phone numbers, and I think even the date that they purchased the device. So that was shared. Well, it was shared. Anybody with an internet connection can go and get that list. And so there's some pretty dire consequences here that, you know, if you did get that device delivered to your home address, there is very likely somebody with bad intentions that has that address list, and they might be in, you know, a local area of somebody that's on that list and decide that they might want to go and pay them a visit because, you know, it doesn't take a genius to work out that if they've got one of these devices, then they are very likely storing some cryptocurrency on it. And they might want to go and pay them a visit with a rather large wrench or hammer to say, hand over your device or I'm going to cause you some harm. So what might seem like a really inconsequential decision to just put your name and address into a website because it's convenient, could have some very, very potentially dire consequences. And I realize that sounds a lot like scaremongering, but these stories do unfortunately happen, and there's people that have been harmed and injured and held hostage for being a public person, or having a sort of known address and being an advocate of Bitcoin and cryptocurrency.
Yeah, I'm glad you mentioned the risks that aren't just like blockchain analysis risks. They're just the real world risks that go along with it. And those things apply to even more privacy preserving cryptocurrencies like Monero. Just because you're using Monero, which by default gives you great on-chain privacy, that doesn't protect you from still being a part of that list that says you own this many Monero, you purchased them then, and then on this exchange, here's your full name, address, all of that. So confiscation would still apply to that. Just like the hardware wallet hack with Ledger that you mentioned, that would be just as dangerous to Monero or any other cryptocurrency. It's not even a cryptocurrency specific thing. It's just when you attach full name, full address to something that has very clear value, it puts you at risk. And the last thing that jumped out at me around that is that those peer-to-peer exchanges, as more people use them, they become more user-friendly, they gain more liquidity so that it's much easier for you to buy and sell cryptocurrency on those exchanges, things like local Monero, things like BISC. So the more people wake up and start avoiding KYC and start trading directly with other people via peer-to-peer exchanges like the ones I mentioned, and there are others, those solutions improve and improve and improve, and they are getting better day by day. There are new solutions like atomic swaps coming out that help with exchanging between cryptocurrencies, and those things are improving, and the more people jump into them, the more they'll improve. So it's definitely something where even if it's a little bit more painful for you right now, jumping into that, learning the ropes, and contributing liquidity just by buying and selling like you normally would is super, super important.
Yeah, I'll be the first person to admit, as a massive no KYC advocate, that the likes of BISC and local cryptos, local Monero, whatever peer-to-peer exchange that you want to use, they are not as easy to use and get to grips with as a centralized exchange. That was absolutely a fact. So you are going to have to go through a little bit of a pain barrier, but I guess that's one of the small prices to pay to be able to purchase privately. And I think just to kind of echo what you said, really, about one of the common sort of comebacks that I get is when I'm sort of sharing resources around these peer-to-peer exchanges, that people go on and just go, there's no liquidity, or just typical answers like that. Is like you just said, it's a bit of a self-fulfilling prophecy, really, that the more people that use them, naturally the more liquidity there's going to be. And I think like I say, self-fulfilling prophecy, the network and the liquidity pool is going to grow. The problem arises, I guess, really, is when you some of the payment methods, you still have to interact with the legacy system. So if you're starting to do sort of larger volumes, depending on your banking system, if that's one of the payment options that you use, then they might start asking questions. So that, it's not without its risks in terms of anytime that you interface with the legacy banking system, you're going to have to start to be careful. So that's why options like cash, if you've got an ATM near you, a cryptocurrency ATM, they're a perfect option, really. There's options out there where you can do so with just a phone number, which is fairly easy to spoof these days through services like textverified.com. But yeah, it's just a kind of brief sort of word of warning, I guess, is that yes, the liquidity's not as sort of deep as we would like it. It's getting there, but also just be careful. If you do choose to use sort of a bank transfer to do a purchase, then just be mindful of how frequently you're doing that, and sort of the volumes that you're going to do it, because unfortunately there are some banks out there that do start to sort of flag repeat payments to different people as sort of suspicious behavior, and then they start asking questions. So it might be a good idea to have a second bank account if you can, and just use that for your peer-to-peer transactions. That's always a good approach.
Yeah, it's a really good, quick way to learn that you are not necessarily allowed to do whatever you want with your money, even if the things that you're doing are legal and are not illegal in any way. But you quickly learn that the money you think you have, you don't really have, but you only have if you use it in the ways that are approved by the legacy system, which is a good little Bitcoin Monero red pill there. You learn that the hard way oftentimes.
Yeah, I think the final thing we're touching on this topic, I guess, is the whole circular economy piece. If you don't need to interface with that legacy banking system at all, if you can earn in your chosen currency of choice and then spend that with merchants, or if you're making purchases online, if there's merchants where you can use that currency, then that whole circular economy piece, you're removing that the biggest hurdle, I guess, in terms of the legacy banking system, by just not having to deal with them at all. Now, it might seem the thought of that might seem completely alien to some people, going, well, I've got a fiat job. I don't have any extracurricular skills. Who's going to pay me in Bitcoin? But all I would say to that is, if a high school dropout like me can do it, then I think pretty much everybody's capable of doing it. Even if it's just in small amounts, you've got to just start somewhere.
Yeah, it can be as simple as just when you go out to eat with friends and someone gets the bill, paying you back in cryptocurrency. That can be a simple way to start that circular economy that doesn't require any extra skills, but you can start to kind of take on different tasks and handle those things over something like Bitcoin as frequently as you can. And that can be a good way to introduce friends to that and start to build that out and start to just actually use cryptocurrency between peers rather than through central exchanges and that kind of thing. Let's take a quick break from this episode to chat about the sponsors of Opt-out, Cake Wallet and local Monero. Cake Wallet is a key tool that I use daily, as it allows me to easily and quickly use Monero for private by default payments. It's available on both iOS and Android, and is a fantastic way to get started buying and using Monero with a simple and easy to understand user experience. I regularly onboard new users to Cake Wallet and hope that it will help simplify and ease your journey into cryptocurrency. If you're interested in purchasing Monero for the first time, or helping to bring others into a parallel economy, I'd recommend you look at using local Monero, like I do, to buy and sell Monero while maintaining your privacy and avoiding invasive exchange surveillance. Local Monero is entirely peer-to-peer and is an important part of opting out of the surveillance state and into a parallel economy. Thank you to both sponsors for their incredible support and partnership, and I hope you'll take a moment after the episode to learn more in the show notes or at optoutpod.com/sponsors. I wanted to circle back to what we talked about a little bit earlier, where you talked about some of the kind of privacy mistakes or issues that you realized you made in your past that you regret. I just wanted to see if there were any others that kind of pop out at you that you've gone through. I think you have a kind of a good normal scenario that you've walked through that's good for people to hear. But I also was just curious what prompted you to move past those specific mistakes and change your approach.
Oh, yeah. Well, mistakes, I've made all of them, literally all of them. So like I said earlier, I used to have an Alexa, I used to have an Apple Watch, I had a smart thermostat. I even had smart light bulbs. I went the whole hog. More, I suppose, on the personal things that we haven't talked about. I only started to use a VPN service, again, since I've sort of gone down the privacy rabbit hole. So, moving back further than sort of 4 years ago, everything I did online was my ISP saw every single thing. I'd never even heard of the Tor browser. I just thought that was something that criminals use to go and buy guns and weed and hitmen. Never used the Tor browser. When I first came into the Bitcoin space, I was searching my addresses on a public Explorer with no VPN, which is terrible in terms of kind of Bitcoin privacy. Not only does my ISP know my address, as well as the hardware wallet manufacturer whose default wallet I was using. So that was another one. And using my home address to order Bitcoin related tools, early hardware wallets, they were all ordered to my home address. I didn't even know what a PO box was. So like I say, I've made all of them, and I'm sure they'll be very, very common to a lot of people listening to this. So what prompted me to sort of move past them? I guess it would be just getting involved in the communities that I've spoken about and speaking to people specifically around the Samurai Wallet ecosystem and the sort of the ecosystems that are close to them as well. It's just absolutely I'll hold my hands up, absolutely just being a leech in terms of knowledge and just learning from other people that had made probably most of the mistakes that I've just gone through, but they'd made them earlier than I did. They'd already taken steps to improve and to sort of rid themselves of the mistakes that they've made in the past. So I guess, like I say, just thankful for those sorts of people. They know who they are that have sort of dragged me along, kicking and screaming along their journey with me. And I've picked up a few things along the way. And I suppose another piece as well would be, I'm a massive podcast fan. So more specifically, obviously, generally speaking around Bitcoin, but that kind of sort of there's a lot of things that, you know, they don't always just talk about Bitcoin. You know, privacy does come up, or not quite as frequently as I would like, which is why I go on podcasts to talk about it. But, you know, people like Matt Odell talking about, you know, get rid of Alexa. You know, I've got a lot to thank for Matt, and I know you've had him on recently. So just people like that are explaining the risks in an easy to understand manner that sort of isn't scary. And I guess, which is, you know, kind of what I try and do now as well, just to hopefully pass that on as well.
Yeah. And I mean, I just want to specifically call out that when you're interacting with people, and I know I mentioned this a little earlier, you don't really know what impact you're going to have on them, and the person you're talking to could be a Q&A. And I mean, just to be completely honest, like the privacy and Bitcoin educational material that you've put out and the work you've done is absolutely some of the best in the space, if not the best in the Bitcoin space. And yet I know you have a more kind of a normal journey. You're not, you don't claim yourself as being super technical, but just the work that you've done out of that, it was very much not something where you just leached and then ran off with that information. Like you took that and you ran with it, and now you're kind of sharing that with maybe the next generation of people who are privacy aware and focused on those things. And you've done a ton there. So I just want to remind people, when you're having these conversations with people, it may seem pointless, or maybe the person doesn't seem like they're taking it in at first, or it seems like you're just constantly having to work on the kind of the little things that you've been past for a long time in your privacy journey. But you never know what you're going to be able to do with that information. So doing those things in a way that's not scaremongering, that's not kind of a paranoid and fear-driven approach, but really kind of taking the time to take people who are clearly curious and clearly wanting to take privacy seriously under your wing, and really kind of just mentoring them and sharing with them the tips and tricks that you've learned can have such a huge impact on just their lives personally, and on potentially the lives of tons of other people, thousands of other people who are going to read their future educational material and be taken under their wings as mentees, and just lots of different ways that those simple conversations can have very broad, very long-lasting impacts.
Yeah, I harp on about community a lot when I go on podcasts, especially around sort of people's educational journeys. And what I will say is that I suppose probably part of the reason that I've been able to learn so much from others in the various communities is the fact that I was willing to put the work in myself as well. You know, you can't just turn up to one of these rooms and just say, you know, teach me about privacy. You know, you've got to go in and, you know, specific, you know, if you're having a particular issue, you know, and you just go into one of the Telegram rooms, or you ask on Twitter and say, you know, I'm trying to do this thing and it's broken. Nobody's going to help you. You know, you need to go in, you know, have a bit of finesse about it. You need to go in and say, okay, here's what I'm trying to do. Here's the steps that I've taken, and here's where I'm getting stuck. Kind of show people that you've taken as many steps as you can first, and people will be much more open to sort of giving you their time, which, as we know, is really, really valuable to walk you through and hopefully get you over that next hurdle. So yeah, community is absolutely huge, but you've got to be willing to put the work in as well yourself if you're sort of serious about taking the next steps and sort of increasing or being more sovereign and private. Yeah,
absolutely. I think that's critical advice in the privacy space, and really in any kind of support scenario, honestly. And there's lots of places where people will just take the time to do everything they can, document what they've tried, and give clear information to the people who are trying to help. There's so much value there, and that also is so essential in the FOSS space, because there's normally not companies and support teams and all of these different groups that are willing or able to dedicate the time to kind of dig into the issue for you. So bringing as much info as possible is very, very important. And was it that same kind of group of Bitcoiners that helped to spark an interest in FOSS for you, or was that kind of a different revelation, or a kind of a different time frame?
Oh no, definitely it was a Bitcoin thing, and the same sort of ecosystem. Yeah, definitely. Again, before I got into Bitcoin, much like the Tor browser and a Raspberry Pi, didn't have a clue what they were. I also didn't know what open source meant, or free and open source software. Didn't have a clue why it was important. It's very much something that I've sort of learned to understand and see the value in over the last sort of couple of years when I've been speaking to various people and interacting with the various tools and products, to the point now where I, specifically with Bitcoin related tools, but also more widely outside that as well, when I'm looking for a tool to do a specific job, I will always look for free and open source software options first. And in the very, very unlikely scenario where I can't find a suitable FOSS tool to fit my needs, only then will I look to more proprietary options. And I just think I think it's the FOSS community is seems to be somewhat growing, but I will happy to go on record and say that unfortunately, and I don't know whether this is just a Bitcoin thing, hopefully it is and it's not sort of spreading elsewhere, but there seems to be a bit of a whitewashing of the term FOSS and what it really means. There seems to be people that are happy to just say, well, the source code is viewable, so it's FOSS, which, as people like yourself, Seth, will know, that's unfortunately, well, not unfortunately, that is not the case. Just because the source code is viewable, that doesn't make it FOSS. And unfortunately, there does seem to be a bit of a whitewashing of the term to kind of people piggyback off the good name that FOSS has and what and the ideology around FOSS. People unfortunately trying to sort of change the narrative to mean to just source viewable, which is sad. And it's good to see that people are pushing back on that. And I just hope that continues, that we don't sort of lose that true sort of ideology and the importance of it.
Do you mind breaking down just quickly what free and open source software is? If it's not just source viewable, like what makes it unique and makes it different than that?
It's essentially, well, source viewable is first and foremost. So can you read the code and audit that this tool is doing what it says it's doing? That might not be the case for somebody like me, a complete Luddite who wouldn't know a piece of code if it hit him in the face. But the point is that I know there are people out there that can do that if they want to, and are more likely to because the project is FOSS. So that's the first thing. The second thing, the free as in freedom, is that essentially anybody can take this code, anybody can modify it to do what they want, anybody can redistribute it or sell it. That is another paramount for that. Now, there is some nuances around the licenses, which are kind of a little bit above my pay grade, but the sort of TLDR on it is that there's sort of the MIT license, which essentially grants the ability to do anything you want. You can take this, you can modify it, you can take it and close source it and then sell it if you want to. And then there is the sort of GPL string of licenses where you can do all of that. You can go on, you can sell it, you can modify it. But when you do that, you have to make it open source again also. So people commonly refer to this as a copyleft license, where, like I say, you can do anything you want as long as what you put out is also open source. So it kind of ensures that the open source virus continues to spread, if you like. So somebody can't just take it, put it into a black box, and then just make a profit off it, basically. So that's my sort of rough understanding of the importance of FOSS, and the same goes for hardware as well, really.
Yeah, thanks for breaking that down. The intricacies of open source licensing are far beyond my pay grade as well, so it's not something I can expand on too much for people, but it's definitely something I'm trying to learn more about. But I think that key piece that you mentioned is that it's something that's free use, and it's more than just a technical thing. It's also really an ideology and something where people are willing and friendly to people who want to take and improve that project and move it on, and forking is completely fine. And that's something where so much growth has happened in the ecosystem because of people being able to just fork a project and make it slightly more one way or another, slightly unique to them, focusing on a different specific user. There's been so much value out of that ecosystem, but thanks for breaking that down a bit for us.
I think just to kind of cap that piece off as well is that specifically again around the Bitcoin and the cryptocurrency ecosystem is, people are storing their life savings in this sort of stuff and using free and open source software that, if there's a piece of software that's got a completely open and permissive license, and again, I'll use Samurai Wallet as an example, but there's loads of others. It does seem to be a trend in the space. There's going to be more people that are able to view the code or contribute to the code that are going to be willing to do that because of that permissive license. So that that project or the space as a whole benefits from that, and these tools become more secure, especially when we're talking about people who are, like I say, storing their life savings in these tools and these projects. The more eyes on the code, the better. The more people that are contributing or willing to contribute to that project, the whole space benefits from it. Whereas if there is a closed source license, there's much fewer people that are going to be willing, for obvious reasons, to even take a look at that code, because what incentive have they got to do that? They're not sort of going to gain any benefit from that. So it's just the whole sort of out in the open thing just kind of draws people to it. And we've seen perfect examples of that in the last 10 or 15 years since the cryptocurrency space. And obviously I only sort of spin in the Bitcoin circles, but the rate of growth in this ecosystem, where a very large part of it is free and open source, the growth has absolutely exploded, and hopefully it continues. It's really good to see.
Yeah, absolutely. It's been a huge part of what cryptocurrency is and what Bitcoin is open source code. So it's been a huge part of that growth, and that's allowed for a lot of other inventions and a lot of other app layers to be built on top, like Samurai Wallet. And it's definitely a key thing to so many pieces of the circles we're involved in. But I think a lot of people underestimate how many of the things that they use daily exist because of FOSS and because of the ideology of FOSS throughout the years. Super, super interesting to learn more about that. And I love that that's been a focus for you. And I was also curious, you've done a ton of work on education in the Bitcoin privacy space. And I was curious if that has been something, as you've been working on educational material and getting to know other people who are doing education and just kind of driving in more than just helping your own privacy in Bitcoin, but trying to help others. Has that been something that's driven you to an interest in broader personal privacy and maybe towards education on broader personal privacy?
Yeah, definitely. I would absolutely love to write more guides that are kind of less tied to Bitcoin, I guess, really. It's just a case of there's not enough hours in the day, unfortunately. And this year, I, like I touched on earlier, started work at Foundation Devices, which is a startup company, and we are a very small team, and we're incredibly busy, and we're working really, really hard to push out the best hardware and software that we can. So the time that I've got to write about the things that I love is somewhat diminished. Coupled with that, alongside some pretty big changes in terms of my family life this year, my free time's taken a massive hit. So the cadence at which I was cranking out guides has taken a nosedive off a cliff, unfortunately. So hopefully that's going to change in the future. And yeah, definitely, I really do want to start to write more about the privacy tools that aren't strictly tied to Bitcoin as well. It's just a bit of a juggling act at the moment, shall we say.
I 100% understand with a young kid and wife and just all the other complexities of life, including full-time job and everything. It definitely gets tricky to have time for those extra things, even when you're putting out so much content around Bitcoin privacy. So to expand even further than that is definitely, it's tricky, but I would love to see that from you. I think that'd be super valuable. And even your stuff around Calyx OS and the guides you put out around that have been super helpful. So I definitely would be fully on board if you have time to put out more content around that. I'm sure I'm going to be super appreciative. Your work is excellent and speaks for itself. Yeah,
I've recently I've been for Foundation, I've been doing getting into a bit of video editing and stuff, and I found quite a bit of a passion for that. I wouldn't say I'm very good at it at the moment, but I think if I do, my free time does miraculously free itself up over the next sort of 12 months. I think I think I'd like to explore more into some video tutorials, things like that. I just think it's a really great model. It's and equally, it's like I say, it's just something that I enjoy the process of going through and doing the filming and the editing. Obviously, I don't go on camera as I'm a NIM, but I think you can still get some great information across without needing to put your face on camera. So it's something that I am hopefully going to explore. So if I can do that around some privacy tools, I think that'd be great, and I'm looking forward to finding some time to be able to do it.
Yeah, I will definitely be keeping an eye out for that. That'd be awesome to see. You mentioned a few times Foundation, the company you've started working for. Would you mind just kind of sharing a little bit about what working for a kind of FOSS and I don't know if you can say FOSH, but free and open source hardware first company like Foundation has been for you, and then maybe just a little bit about what Foundation does. I know you gave a little intro earlier, but I just wanted to give the chance for listeners to learn a little bit more about that, because they obviously were able to win you over and get you working for them and putting out content for them. So excited to hear more about them.
Yeah. So starting work at Foundation was very surreal and very much a dream come true in terms of the ethos of the company around free and open source hardware and software, and obviously my more recent allegiances with trying to maximize my exposure to FOSS and minimize my exposure to everything else. Really good timing. I've really enjoyed it. We've got a really small team. I think there's just 12 of us at the moment, so we are very much in startup mode, where we work really hard with a really small team, and we get an incredible amount of work done. Our core, we've only got one product on the market at the moment, which recently sold out, which is a really great sort of signal from the market that we're on the right track. We make a hardware wallet for Bitcoin only, designed to be able to create and store your private keys in a completely offline manner. We do all of our communication with wallet software. We don't ship with an app. We just make sure that we are compatible with every open source app possible, so that the user basically buys a device off us and then we don't know anything about them. So that's very much close to our heart, that we absolutely don't want to know anything about our customers other than the fact that they've got the device and that it's working properly.
Yeah.
So we make sure we work really hard to make sure that we're compatible with all of the great pieces of free and open source wallet software out there that work with hardware wallets, so that the user is free to make that choice whether they want to interact with Blue Wallet or Sparrow Wallet or Spectre Desktop. They've got that choice. So we do sort of all of our communication back and forth. Either you can do the micro SD card shuffle, as I like to call it, where you can pass transaction data back into, or the sort of default is via QR codes. So you can just sort of scan QR codes from your computer, and then the device will show a QR code, and you can scan that back in with your computer's camera, and you can pass transactional data that way. All of this is designed so that you don't need to connect the device physically to your computer, which may or may not be infested with malware. We know that 90% of the population are not great with their computer-based security, so there's a very high likelihood that a lot of computers out there are malware infected. So we kind of create that. Our device enables that physical air gap where private keys don't need to touch any online device that may be insecure. So when we enable people to be able to store what might be to them a significant portion of their wealth in a really secure method that is easy to use, that's not really scary. There isn't loads of menus, and it's not a sort of imposing piece of hardware. It looks good, it feels good. So we kind of just want to bring that to as many people as possible, really. So like I say, we recently sold out, so we're working hard on our batch 2 device, which is due to ship in February. So we're working hard on sort of finalizing the improvements on that. And thankfully, with the supply chain issues that the world is seeing at the moment, we've already secured the hardware that we need, so
Nice.
we're not sort of at risk to fall prey to the impending doom of the supply chain lottery at the moment. So yeah, we're sort of plugging away at the moment, and we're taking pre-orders for our second batch of devices. And one kind of just sort of little anecdote that I just wanted to share, that I want to share it because nobody's done it yet, is that if you pre-order from us and you pre-order and you pay in Bitcoin, we're due to ship in February next year. If you do that today and it's $199 with Bitcoin. If when we ship in February that Bitcoin price is increased, and let's say that $200 worth of Bitcoin is now worth $400, when we ship, we'll ship you the device, and we'll also ship you the difference back in Bitcoin as well, so you haven't lost the exposure to the Bitcoin. So we're kind of very, people listening to this might be thinking, that's ludicrous. How can you sort of that's a terrible business decision. But our pre-orders are absolutely flying and telling us that this is a really good decision. So I appreciate that it's not kind of a privacy piece, but I just wanted to share it because I think it's a really great idea. I wish it was my idea, but it wasn't. It was Zach, our CEO.
Yeah, I've really enjoyed it. I've got to know Zach a little bit just in chatting back and forth. And I love the vision that Foundation has. And I think it's important that people see that FOSS and FOSS-centric companies don't have to be like nonprofits, or it doesn't have to be a project that has no company behind it. Like, there are ways for companies to actually care about free and open source software and actually care about their customers' privacy while still making money and earning a living. And so it's cool to see what seems like a very well-run company there. Obviously, they got you on board, and you're very much someone that I respect. But it's been great to see their approach to each of these things, and I love those unique ideas like that of making sure that people who buy aren't regretting their purchase or regretting spending the Bitcoin at that point in time, because Bitcoin is still a relatively volatile asset. So it's a very fascinating way to approach handling sales in a volatile asset and helping to just kind of assuage any simple fears that people may have around that. It's a fascinating idea.
Yeah, just one final thing to share as well, that it's obviously won't be sort of common knowledge, but even in the background, we sort of we're having a massive shift in our sort of infrastructure, so that all of the tools that we use that are not public facing, we're making sure that as many of those as possible are also free and open source. So we're awesome. Implementing our sort of customer interfacing sort of support ticket system. And a knowledge base called Free Scout, which is a free and open source piece of software. We've just recently implemented that. We're on the cusp of moving ourselves over to Nextcloud as well to host files and all of our company documents and things like that. So it's not just the public facing stuff. We're not just doing it for show to get the FOSS advocates on board. We're actually living and breathing it and sort of practicing what we preach in the background as well, which I think is really important and just shows that we're not kind of we're not all talk. We are genuinely FOSS enthusiasts, and we do really think that it is the future.
Yeah, definitely. Seems like it's not just a marketing ploy, which is refreshing to see, because so many people and so many companies are willing to, I feel like, say whatever it takes to kind of get people sucked in. But it seems like it's something that runs much deeper and is a core part of the ethos behind Foundation. So it's been great to learn more about them. Thanks for giving us a little kind of intro into what they do and a look behind the scenes into how Foundation operates. Well, last couple questions. I wanted to give you a chance to share just some of the tools that you use regularly to opt out that you'd recommend others to take a look at, and then why those tools specifically.
So there's probably going to be a lot of repeats from your previous guests here. Obviously, I've touched on my obvious bias of Foundation devices and Samurai Wallet as well. Those are my two sort of Bitcoin tools of choice. Outside of Bitcoin, much like yourself, I'm a massive fan of Pop! OS. I recently, 2 days ago actually, just took delivery of my Star Labs laptop, which
nice.
Most people listening to this have probably never heard of. It's a British company. It very much seems like the kind of UK's answer to System 76, where they are sort of making sort of a Linux first laptop, which is easily upgradable. You know, you need one tool to take it apart to upgrade the RAM and things like that. Ships with core boot. And talked perfectly to most Linux distros. So I've just been getting to grips with that, and first impressions have been absolutely incredible. Really great piece of kit. So I'm looking forward to getting to grips with that a little bit more. But for people that want to check that out, I think their website is starlabs.systems. It took, I'll hold my hands up, it took a very, very long time to be delivered. Again, I think it was due to the supply chain issues. I had to wait 7 months for it to be delivered. So just be prepared for a little wait. But I will say that it's a very, very nice piece of hardware. Outside of that, in terms of apps, I'm a big fan of Threema, which is an end-to-end encrypted messaging protocol, which, funny enough, we organised tonight's talk via, didn't we,
Yep.
Seth?
Yeah.
Also, a massive, huge fan of a tool called Unohost, which I know you had Diverter on to talk about as well.
Yeah.
And for those that haven't heard that show, Unohost is a free and open source platform that you can install onto pretty much any piece of hardware that you want: laptop, desktop, Raspberry Pi, virtual private server. And it's kind of like an app store for free and open source apps. So you can install Unohost on, like I say, any piece of hardware. And from there, you can install, one-click install a password manager like Bitwarden, or Standard Notes, which is sort of an encrypted cross-platform notes application, and you can also, another big one that I'm a big fan of, and I do actually run my own server, is Matrix, another one that I know you're a fan of as well, which again is like a Matrix. For those that haven't heard of it, is kind of a federated messaging system where you can think of it like what Mastodon is to Twitter, Matrix is to kind of Telegram, I guess. It's kind of the sort of decentralized alternative where users can have their own, they can host their own server, and they can host their own rooms on that server as well. And, multiple people can use the same server as well. So it's kind of a decentralized answer to a messaging protocol.
Yeah, I think we both have communities on there. You have one on Matrix, right? That you host.
Yeah, I host my own room, and I've hosted my own server, and I've got my own sort of Bitcoin focused chat where people can, it's geared towards people coming to ask beginner focused questions on coming to learn about Bitcoin. And I know Diverter hosts his own room as well, which is Bitcoin focused, but there's loads of different communities out there as well.
Yeah.
So I host my own server and sort of offer, anybody that they want can kind of sign up using my home server. Obviously, there comes with a little bit of trust in that they've got to sort of trust me to not sort of deplatform them. But I do that in the hope that, it might red pill just a couple of people to think, well, hang on a minute, I'm no better off here if I'm using Q&A server. So I like Matrix, and I like the ecosystem. I like these chat rooms that I'm in. I'm going to look into running my own server. It won't be for everybody because it is a slightly larger barrier to entry, and it's absolutely not a requirement. But I think by hosting my own server, hopefully it might get a few more people to do the same and sort of add to the decentralized network, or decentralized nature of that network, really. And I guess finally as well is big fan of Mullvad VPN, which again I know that you use as well. Obviously you can. There's no names account. You just have an account number. You can pay with Bitcoin, or can you pay with Monero as well?
Not directly. They, I think, partner with a really cool digital store called, I think it's Digital Goods Proxy Store. The URL's kind of hard to remember, but basically you can buy a voucher for using Mullvad with Bitcoin or Monero on that store. And as far as I know, that's an official partnership, but it's the way that I bought my Mullvad subscription, and I've sent codes to several others and had several other people buy it through there. So I think that's the only way to do that with Monero, but I think they do accept Bitcoin directly.
They do, yeah. So I'm a big fan of Mullvad. Very easy to sort of get on board. And in terms of sort of your online privacy, it's a very, very much a sort of quick win to sort of protect yourself from, your ISP from tracking literally everything that you do online. So, I'd probably say if somebody's out here at literally square one and listening to all the mistakes that I made and saying that that sounds like me right now, I'd say Morvad is probably a really good option to look to take your first step. Really low barrier to entry and quite big. You get a lot of reward from quite little effort as well, really. Yeah. And I suppose just finally to cap off the tools that I use, I've actually, because I got so many DMs and questions about this, I stuck a page up on my website. So it's to basically list all of the different tools that I use in terms of computing, Bitcoin related communication, mobile apps, things like that. So if anybody's interested in literally every single little thing that I use in terms of privacy and FOSS, if you go to bitcoiner.guide/toolkit, literally every single thing is there. So that'll be a completely sort of exhaustive list of all of the tools that I've sort of grown to learn to use and to love over the past couple of years.
Yeah, once you have had a conversation with a few different people about what kind of things you recommend, you learn very quickly. It's helpful to just keep a list, and if you do have a public blog or something, make that list public, because it's a great way to bring new people in, but also just saves you so much time if you can just point them towards the list. And yeah, I'm looking at your page right now. It's a bajillion things on here, all nicely categorized. It's a super, super good resource. Definitely will post that in the show notes.
Awesome.
And last question I have for you, man, is what advice would you give to someone who's just starting to realize the need for personal privacy?
So I'll start with an apology. I'm going to repeat myself here, but it is worth repeating. Keep it simple. Start small. Don't try and take on the world in a week, because you're going to fall over. And get involved in the communities. Don't be afraid to ask for help. But just make sure that you've kind of had a good poke around yourself first. And, again, don't be afraid to make mistakes. If you're starting from absolute step zero, the chances of you making a mistake that are going to make things worse by just trying one of these privacy tools is very, very slim. So don't be afraid to have a go. And most of the apps that, especially on that list that I've just spoken about that's on my website, 99% of them are completely free. So you've got absolutely nothing to lose in other than, an hour or two of your time by just trying it out to see if you like it. But yeah, just choose one sort of aspect of your sort of privacy life and sort of focus on that initially. And just don't be afraid to ask questions. I always cringe when I say this, but there's no other way to say it. But my DMs are open, and I'm, I absolutely hate saying it, but I'm more than happy for anybody listening to this that kind of wants to take the next step to take back their sovereignty and their privacy. More than happy, just ping me a DM on Telegram, Twitter, Matrix, anything like that. I'm more than happy to help. But yeah, just don't let perfect be the enemy of good. That's another diverted quote that he's going to berate me for copying. But there's a lot in that, and it means, it essentially just means just start. Just pick something, just start. 9 times out of 10, it won't be as hard as you think it's going to be. Don't let the decision making of which thing to choose first to sort of, I suppose you call it analysis paralysis, wouldn't you? Just get started, get involved, ask questions. Don't be afraid to make mistakes, and just get started.
Great advice. Well, thanks so much again for coming on Q&A. Great to finally get the chance to chat with you directly and kind of jump into a lot of topics that I've seen you talk about or seen you involved in, but haven't got to talk about as much directly. So really, really great chance to get to dive through those things. And for those listeners who want to follow up and maybe communicate with you, what are the best ways for them to do that?
If you just go to my website, which is bitcoiner.guide, my list of resources is there. If you scroll to the bottom of the page, all of my contact methods are there. Reach out to me on any single one of those, and happy to get in touch and communicate. And just want to cap off by saying that thank you to you, Seth, as well for putting your content out. I really love reading what you put out, and obviously the podcast has been massively influential for me since you've started it. So, fun fact, it's literally the only Bitcoin related podcast that I listen to. So you're top of the pile. So yeah, just want to say thanks for doing what you do and keep it up, man.
Yeah, man, very, very grateful for the opportunity to make this podcast and interact with people like yourself, and just try to kind of give back to the community, and hopefully prompt a lot more people to take this seriously and start taking some real actionable steps. So very grateful for this opportunity, and thankful to be able to chat with you today. Have a good one.
Thanks, Seth. Take care, man.
Thanks for listening, and I hope you enjoyed this episode of Opt Out. If you did, please take a moment and subscribe to the podcast, or if you're already subscribed, share it with one friend or family member this week. As always, you can check out the link to the guest content and contact info, as well as links to all of the tools we discussed in today's episode. Now get out there and opt out this week. This week's project to help you opt out is one I'm sure you're all familiar with, PopOS. I've had several guests on who have mentioned it at length, but I wanted to highlight it again as it's been a huge breakthrough for me. Pop has enabled me to, much more easily than I expected, transition entirely to Linux on both my desktop and laptop, and break free of Windows and macOS. Pop integrates a very clean and optimized version of GNOME with many presets and custom apps and settings to make GNOME a much better overall experience, for me at least. It also bundles their own GUI app store that simplifies the process of installing apps, whether natively or via Flatpaks, enabling a much easier process of installing all of the tools you're used to or want to switch to. I've even been able to transition the little bit of PC gaming I do to Pop using Steam Play and Proton, which was a complete surprise to me, but has been a pretty seamless experience for all but a few of the games in my library. If you've been wanting to make the jump to Linux, I'd highly recommend checking out the links to Pop in the show notes, or listening into my special episode with Jeremy Soler from System 76, where we discussed both their hardware, open source firmware, and Pop OS at length.